So I would love to hear the story that is just speaks to this conversation. I'm going to turn it back to you, Eleni.
Thank you. Well, this is a story that is very, very old, actually. It happened more than 15 years ago. And it was long before I decided I'm going to pursue interspecies communication as a practitioner, as actually offering it to fellow humans and animals. I was asked by a friend of a friend to assist him with a dog that he had. Let's call him John and let's call the dog Roxy. Okay. So it is a very sensitive and a very, very beautiful story. And it was one that actually also ignited my need to go deeper with interspecies communication, more so than coaching on holistic treatments. So when John called me, he said that his dog was only 9 months old and that she had serious liver problems, and her blood values for her liver were off the roof. She was very, very sick all the time. She couldn't keep any food down. Her growth was not happening as beautifully and as healthily as it should because of malnutrition, because of the liver problems. And he wanted to be coached a little bit about herbs because he had tried so many other options about specific, maybe natural food and all kinds of stuff. So at the time, because he wasn't very far away from me, at the time I was able to actually take that case and at one time visit them and see them at a park. And I saw a dog that was completely malnourished and bones and skin, and she was very unhappy with her life. And I felt this heaviness in my heart. And I also felt a lot of pain on my right side where the liver is. John was, and it is, I'm going to say this here, we will understand. I mean, people in our group. Men are a little bit more difficult to understand about energy, especially 15 years ago. And they're a little bit more close to it than most humans are. So although I felt this imbalance from Roxy, I wasn't feeling comfortable or invited to talk about it. It was all about, okay, what do we do? What herb do we give? And what, so on, practical information. That's what he needed, some practical advice, nothing else. He was also a very closed off person altogether. And although I was referred by a very close, dear friend of both of us, he wasn't feeling very comfortable because he was also exhausted. His dog, he adopted this dog when she was 2 or 3 months old and she was sick the whole time. So he was at his wit's end. And so we were trying a lot of things. And we tried for 2 or 3 months. I think she turned 1 when I realized that I had to listen to Roxy, even though I was not asking her questions. She was knocking the door. She found someone who could listen, but I was always feeling that, if I don't have his permission, if I'm not actually practicing this, I shouldn't do this because this is exchange of energy. And if I do this wrong, I might get the animal more sick and so on and so forth. So I wasn't really open to have a conversation with her, but she was insisting. And she shared things with me. And when I realized that there's no other way than for me to listen, then I said, okay, I'm here to listen. Tell me what's going on. And she showed me something, and it was extremely vivid. It was like a movie, a story being played as a movie in front of me. It was so, not just vivid, but so detailed. There were a lot of information, a lot of details. And she basically said, that's why I hurt. And it took me a few days before I built up the courage and the strength to call this square type human to say, you know what, I want to tell you something and I want to share something with you. I have this ability where sometimes the animal shows like, and he was completely dismissive from the beginning, like, no, it's like, I don't believe in all that. I don't want to hear it. And I said, well, I think it's important because whatever you have done and whatever we have done together, what every medicine and every doctor have done for you, it hasn't worked. So please listen to me. So I start telling him the story exactly as Roxy shared it with me. And I said, look, I said, I haven't been to your house, and I don't know if what I'm going to describe to you, it is a house, it is your house, but it is a place where it has, you know, this kind of windows, and there's a couch there and a couch there, and you're in the middle of the room, and there is this type of lamp. I mean, great detail of everything. And she showed me everything with great detail, because she was telling me, you have to tell him every single bit, because that would be the only way for him to actually have all the details and understand and believe. And then, and I see you with another man into that room. You're both standing up. The other man is a quite elder man with white hair, gray white hair, but very white mustache. And he's shorter than you. He wears a brown leather jacket, and you're both fighting and you're yelling, the both of you, very, very much. And then you grab this man from the pallet of his coat, of his jacket, and you shake him, and you both shout. And there's also tears and shouting. And I think she showed this to me, and she said that this is how she hurts. So he was very silent while I was giving him all the details. I'm choking up because this is such an amazing, emotional story. I can still remember the stress of the dog and the pain of the dog when she was sharing that. And I could also feel John on the other line, just probably, I mean, he did say it in the end, like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. He hung up the phone. And I'm like, okay. But I also felt a great relief in that moment. I also felt that, okay, lost him, and I don't even know what's going to happen to the dog now, but, you know, I did what I had to do, and I honored what the dog wanted me to do. So almost 2 weeks later, I can't remember exactly, but it was a long time. 2 weeks later, he calls me back. Like, he was very, Eleni, we need to talk. I'm like, okay, I'm here, I'm listening. Like, what you described, there is no way that Roxy has seen. I'm like, okay, so can you help me? Can you please help me? Because I don't know what it is that I described to you. I don't know. It's like, said, and he explained to me, it's like, let me tell you why this cannot happen. I've never been to his house. And he said that, you've never been to my house. Like, how do you know what my house looks like? It's like, and I just recently moved to this house because I was looking for a house that would allow me to have a pet. So this is the house where I got Roxy. And I'm like, okay, so she described me your house. That's possible. You know, when we're communicating with animals, they can describe to us, you know, where they live. It's like, and he said, yes, but that man she never met. And I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get it now. And I'm like, so can you please tell me? It's like, that was my father, who died 2 years ago. Roxy had just turned 1. So he died. He's never been to this house. He has never met the dog. The dog has never met him. So he said, what you described to me is like, he called me a lot of names, actually. It was very funny, but in a loving kind of way. It's like, it's impossible for you to know, and it is impossible for the dog to know, and it's not happening. And I said, well, please allow me to explore this with you. How can this be something that causes her pain? How can this be something that causes her pain on the liver? And then I go and say to him, liver means anger. We store our anger. And if you had a fight with your dad and you have stored anger in your liver, maybe she's picking up on that, on you. And he said, then that's another thing. How do you know that I have a problem with my liver? I'm like, I don't. And Roxy didn't even share that with me, but I assumed, knowing how these energies many times work. So he was very upset, and I was very upset because I was in an uncharted territory. I didn't really know what was happening, and it was one of the very, very rare cases where I was having so many details. And I said, John, you really need to tell me more about this story, because I'm only trying to help. I'm not going to share anything with anyone. So he said to me, and he started crying eventually. I mean, he hung up the phone again, and we called again. This went on for a few weeks, actually, for him to start releasing information, for him to start bringing his pain into consciousness. He said that same night, after that fight that my father and I actually did have, he had a stroke and he died. So long story short, he carries on the pain and guilt that that argument killed his father. I'm responsible for my father's death. And that destroyed my relationship with my brother and my sister. That destroyed my relationship with my partner woman that I had at that time. What was one of the reasons why I had to move out from my family home. And I moved to this house and I didn't want to be alone, and I adopted a dog. And I started drinking, and that has actually caused me problems with my liver and so on and so forth. So there is a family that is broken, right? And there is a dog who we think knows nothing about this, and he can't really process how is it possible. And then I explained to him, I said, animals communicate with us, and that means that she communicates with you and you communicate with her through pictures. So if you day in and day out, night in and night out, with this guilt and this pain and this fear and this agony, you replay that last conversation in your head with your father, that is what your animal sees from you. That's what she gets from you. Animals communicate through pictures. They read the pictures in our minds. We may not speak the words, but the words make the pictures are there before our brain actually makes the words. So he was definitely here, and he admitted, like, of course I can't get over this. Like, I can never get over this. I know I was treading on very, very sensitive ground and on very thin ice, because I was also dealing with a very fragile and sensitive human that was alone in his life. He was starting to rebuild his relationship with his mother, but the dog would always bark and not allow the mother to come into the new house. The dog would not allow anyone else, friends, he told me that down the road. The dog was barking at anyone else coming into his house, into his new space, into his life. He was starting to have a new relationship with another woman, and she could not come and visit him at the new house because the dog was always barking, and she was becoming very, very aggressive towards other humans. I said, well, aggression, fear, they lie in the liver. So we don't see anything else. I mean, the ultrasounds were clear. The blood work was really bad, but the ultrasounds and the imaging of the dog's liver seemed to be very clear. So there wasn't really a reason why this was happening. So I was starting to explain to him that this is probably energetic. And I started, and I didn't have the answers, but I started just asking him the questions. What if this amazing creature, what if Roxy is sent here from your dad to tell you, heal from the other side? See how the healing all of a sudden starts to be more than multidimensional. I have no words for this. I'm all choked up. So he was very upset. And I was also very careful in telling him, you need to seek assistance for yourself. You need to find some sort of therapist. I don't know if it's going to be a psychiatrist or a healer for you. So thankfully, he started listening, because I could see a man that was so closed off and so defensive from the guilt that he was carrying about what happened, that he wasn't seeking for any kind of help. He was in a state of self-punishment that was hurting his body as much as he was hurting his family and his relations all around him, his emotional and mental well-being, as well as his dogs. The dog could be sent from his dad. The dog could be just mirroring what is happening within that. It doesn't matter. We could find out. But it wasn't important, because the whole issue came into the surface. And now it was up to John to actually seek assistance and start healing it. And then also find a way to start, which also he allowed. He was like, okay, so what do you need to do to help the dog? And I said, well, I feel that all I need to do is just start energetically sending support and healing to her liver. But I honestly think that this is going to be even more effective if you start taking care of yourself emotionally, spiritually, physically, with your drinking and with how you feel about yourself, the self-loathing, how defensive you're against, towards your mother and your siblings, because you feel that they still accuse you, but they don't. They're reaching out to him because they saw him that he's becoming self-destructive, and they forgave him for something that they never accused him of. But to him, it was all this huge mountain of weight on his chest, which I understand. I mean, this was actually a lesson to me to think, I never want to end a conversation with my elderly parents on an angry note, because I will never know if this is the last time that I see them or talk to them. So we kept on talking for a little while longer, for a few weeks, months, actually. The dog was not getting much better, but she was getting a little bit more stable about how she was reacting to the food on a physical level, and how some of the blood work was getting a little bit better. She was becoming a little bit calmer with people coming inside the house. And then there's another thing that comes up. He's thinking, and he's telling me, he's like, I think that I cannot keep this dog. Said, this dog was probably sent by God and my father to start healing this situation, and I'm already making strides. I mean, this is months down the road, but there's no way it doesn't feel like this is right for me or for her. And I said, well, now do I have your permission to talk with her? He said, absolutely. So the dog said, yes, I do not belong here. Mission accomplished. I need to leave this space. I did what I came here to do. And I said, okay, this is wonderful. So why was this a challenge? Because most of us are very much conditioned, self-conditioned or society conditioned, or, peer pressured by animal-loving people and family. You never give up on your animal. You never abandon an animal. You never return it, blah, blah, blah. Of course, yes, we need to show commitment. We need to try. I've never seen another person show that much commitment to their animal, to their own well-being in trying to heal. So I realized in that moment, in this very, very fragile, but also very robust and squared type of person, when he admitted to me something that he knew, and he was very much afraid that would be judged by everyone. How dare you to do that? This is a messenger from your dad and you're getting rid of the dog. Of course, but he felt it. And he said, this is something that comes from my heart. And I realized that he's softening. He's opening up, and he is self-judging, and he's self-accusing, and he's still in guilt, but something is happening. So when I asked the dog, and the dog agreed that he wants to find another home for her, that for herself. And I told him that I also had doubts. I'm like, this isn't right. The conditioning, everything, you don't give up on an animal. And me being also another person that advocates for animal adoption and not abandoning, or, I just couldn't find it that I'm going to actually utter the words to say, let's find her another home. I wasn't believing myself that I was actually doing that, but I was also realizing that there's a power and a strength in me much stronger than my systems of belief. So, parenthesis, healing my systems of belief through that process. The intuitive interspecies communicator was also learning in that time, right? So I had to heal my system of belief that it's okay, because this is right for the dog and this is right for John. He needs to move on. And then, the great problem was like, that this is a very aggressive dog. How are we going to do this? So he looked very, very hard. He was always calling me to tell me, I found these people. And then sometimes we interviewed them together, and with some other of his friends as well. He was doing his best to find the best case scenario. And we were, explaining some sort of the situation without giving many of the details, because they were sounding a little bit crazy, as he was also saying. It's like, it's crazy. We can't tell people that we asked the dog, So a few months passed, and he must have been almost 2 years old, the dog at that time. And he sent, we lost communication at some point. And he called me and said, I found her at home. Said, I'm sending you photographs. And he sent me photographs of Roxy in a pool with children playing and having fun. And then following those photographs, he sent me photos of her tests, her blood work, that everything was perfect and clear. And when this family adopted her, they were hoping, because she did get along with the children, but they were also hoping that they would be getting a guard dog, because she was a bit aggressive. She was mush with everyone. She never barked at another person. She became a happy camper for what I'm understanding was the rest of her life with me. So take your pick. Who healed who? The other side, the father, the son asking forgiveness, the son opening up to introspection and getting assistance and help, something that not many men want to do. Son with the rest of the family, myself letting go of systems of belief that are very limiting to the welfare of humans and animals, because we are one, we're interconnected. And then this dog was so happy. The children that had this dog grew up and they were very happy with her. And the family, everyone, it's the happily ever after kind of story, because we listened, because a healer dog came here and she started healing one after the other, one person after the other.